I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 19th meeting of the Whatcom Transportation Authority's Board of Directors meetings. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with a roll call.
Yes, Donovan.
Here.
Fleetwood.
Here.
Hawkinson.
Here.
Cortez.
Here.
Lautenbach.
Here.
Lilyquist.
Here.
And we have Davidson, Sadhu, and Darwin absent. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to begin with a 30-year service award for Cindy. Mr. Bozzo, are you going to be introducing this and talking about Cindy?
I am, and I am very proud to have that honor. Cindy is one of the premier employees here at WTA. 30 years of impressive service. She started in 1991 as a temp hostler, and it made me think back of what was I doing in 1991. That just sounds like, so long ago, and it is. Within 6 months, she started as full-time, so that was her 30 years starting of full-time service. She was an Employee of the Year in 1995, Employee of the Quarter in 2002, Employee of the Quarter with the entire Hostler crew in 2005, and Goodwill Ambassador in 2016. And I'm sure she would have been honored in all those categories more than once if we said, yeah, let's give it to somebody else. She's already had it. I mean, she's always on the list. She supervises the Hostler crew, the facilities crew, the routes maintenance crew. She's involved in all our facility capital projects. She knows where everything is at. She is just everything that you could want in an employee. She's detailed and precise in all her work, which I really appreciate when we're working on capital projects or discussing them. She knows the details on all that kind of work, even down to what doors are key to like around WTA, which was just an issue this week. Kind, friendly, respected by every member of the staff and the public. And finally, she walks to work 3 miles every day, summer, winter, it doesn't matter the weather, she walks to work. And she's proud of that. And she tries to be conscious of all her environment and the animals around her. If she sees a stray, she'll take it in. She's just that kind of person. Total respect. I've known her for many years before I even was at WTA. Please, along with myself and our staff, honor Cindy in this service. It is a career. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Is Cindy here virtually?
No, she's not. Cindy typically works a split or a shift between, she'll come in anytime between 10 and 12 and then works her shift because the Hostler crew's in the evenings. She's a swing shift. So she's covering multiple shifts, and plus she's a person that likes to stay low key, and she's very, very private about her coming to meetings. So
well, I hope something is planned, and I hope she enjoys the recognition.
Yeah, she will.
Thank you very much for that. We'll now go on to first item which is a public hearing to receive public comment on proposed changes to fare rates and rules. My agenda says Ms. Coleman will have something to say on this, or what?
Yeah, I think it's Tammy, actually.
Yeah.
Who will be leading the discussion, and want to just make the note that we did receive one comment yesterday afternoon that has been forwarded to the board.
I noticed that it was included with the comments that Vicky sent along. And there were some good comments there. The changes that we're making to the fare rates and rules are largely from the fare collection standpoint, largely changing the name of our fare collection system, which was TouchPass and is now UMO. We're also have some clarifying language in there, and changing our criteria for youth ride free from 17 and under to 18 and under in accordance with the state transit some guidelines for the new transit support grants, and that will allow us to collect about $2.8 million in grant funds. So which really offsets a lot of what we would lose by going youth free. The place where we'll notice the most impact to income is going to be in our in the contract with Western and Whatcom, because we have school bus pass programs for both of the colleges, and there are a lot of 18-year-old freshmen. So
Hey, thank you. If there's no further introductory remarks, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If there are any members of the public here who'd like to submit oral testimony, just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask to be recognized.
Hello.
Yes, state your name and you have some time to talk to us.
Yes, this is Jesse Pablo. Does
Hi,
everyone
Jesse.
hear? Do you hear me?
Yes, Jesse, go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to thank Les Reardons and Vicky Esser for working with me on this case. I was assaulted coming off a bus stop, coming back to my house here in Whatcom Falls Park, and there was video that I needed to get from this team, and it looks like it came out incomplete. I'm unsure how the video got compiled, but you know, I want to thank Les and Vicky for doing that. I did carbon copy everyone out of this board today, but I've also carbon copied this over to the AG Ferguson to look over this.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Yes, indeed, we did receive your recent emails.
Okay. Is there any comment from the board in regards to what was sent?
I believe Les will be replying in full. I see he's already given you a short message. But
Okay.
this right now is a public hearing having to do more with fares and rates. Do you have any comments on that aspect?
No, you know what? I'm not really interested in seeing charts and rates and all that. I just want to get to the bottom of what was found out of this. And if Les wants to comment on that, I would appreciate that.
Actually, during this public hearing that we're not going to go there, but Mr. Reardons, you're going to be following up further on this matter?
Well, we're taking a look in light of Jesse's request, which we've replied to on that part of it, but taking a look for lessons learned on our procedures. Our policy is based in law and the retention schedule, but we're taking a look at our implementing policies and how we work with BPD, for example, when they request something and don't come back and pick it up. How do we follow up and close the loop on that?
Okay.
So there's some things we need to work on.
Thank you, Les. Thank you, Jesse. We're now going to see if there's anybody else who wants to speak to the board on this public hearing. This has to do again with proposed changes to fare rates and rules. Okay, seeing none, again, we got some written comments. That brings this public hearing. I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Do we need to take any action on this at this moment?
Not at this moment. Scrolling.
So we now go to public communications. We already received the written ones for the hearing, and we just heard from Jesse Pablo. Is there anybody else in public, or do we know of any other communications the board needs to hear about?
No, sir. Or well, Vicky, unless you received something that I haven't seen.
Well, I think the board is aware that we did receive an inquiry from Congressman Rick Larson, which has been replied to. I suppose that counts.
Yeah, that's been distributed to the board, but we did receive that. We received some press inquiries. I think there's a article this morning in Cascadia Daily News that summarizes that inquiry.
Okay, do you know if the article is out yet for sure?
I understand it's in the print edition. I haven't seen it online yet.
Okay.
But we'll distribute it as soon as there's a link.
Okay, we're going to keep going. We're now going into closed session under state law RCW 42.30.140. We are allowed to go into closed session to discuss certain matters, including an update on the collective bargaining agreement. I believe we will just be taken into a breakout session and return in a bit. How long do we think this closed session will take?
About 5 minutes.
Okay. We're going to adjourn the open session and go into closed session for about 5 minutes. And board members just stay where we are and we'll be moved.
That's right. Thank you. I think that's everybody. Oh, Josh. Oh, there he goes. Okay, so we'll just hang out right here and then I will bring everybody back in 5 minutes or give an update if it's going to be longer.
Thanks, Audra.
Okay, I'd like to reconvene the WTA Board of Directors meeting. We are just returning from a closed session to discuss collective bargaining. It was for discussion only, no action was taken in the closed session. We now go on with a series of 3 actions, the first of which is consideration of approval of a task order for high frequency transit study. And then following that, there will be consideration approval of a task order for zero emission fleet transition plan. These 2 items are sort of closely related. Mr. Wilder, would you like to begin?
Yes, good morning, board members. So these, both of these task orders, as the chair has said, are related, and we have these up for the board's consideration this morning. Both are identified projects in WTA 2040, WTA's long-range transit plan, and both have been budgeted for 2022. So they're both in the budget. The first item, the first task order, is for a high-frequency transit corridor study in the amount of $155,460. We're seeking board approval of that task order. It has basically 2 parts. The first part is to assess the feasibility of a bus rapid transit line in Bellingham. And as part of that study, we're going to be comparing several GO lines, looking at street and land use conditions, making recommendations, and most importantly, setting the stage for possible federal small starts funding. It also has a second part, and that's to identify key short-term improvements to address transit bottlenecks. And it will result in 5 specific designs that could be built along some of those GO lines. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Board members? I can't see everyone, unfortunately, at the moment. So
I'll move it. Michael, I'll move that we approve this expenditure.
Okay, this is the first of the 2?
Yeah. Does it come as a package of?
There are 2 separate items. Your motion, however, could encompass both, if that's clear.
Both's fine with me.
I'll second.
I have a motion before us to approve 2 action items. They're both task order approvals with the Transpo group. First one on high frequency transit corridors, second one on zero emission fleet transition plan. Tim, you didn't actually talk about the zero emission fleet transition plan. Why don't you touch on that before we vote?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. Just you've heard this before, but this one again is related with Transpo Group and STV, which is the sub on this project. I think the most important thing to mention here is that it's going to identify sequencing and a timeline of fleet and other facility improvements. So you'll see a schedule of how we would lay out that procurement. We're also going to be talking about, the state of technology. We're looking at, and you'll have further conversations about budgeting and our priorities, for some of those acquisitions and grant funding. And then you'll also see information about how it's going to affect operations. And of course, that's evolving with the technology. And then also just looking at the appropriate useful life of vehicles too. That'll be a consideration. So in essence, this will be sort of a complete guide to how we move forward and enable you to make well-informed decisions about some of these budget items, some of the capital improvement program items that we've presented to you. So yeah, with that, I'd be happy to answer any further questions.
We do have a motion before us to approve both of these task orders. Is there any further discussion? Again, sorry, I can't see everybody. There we go.
Michael, on this, I guess when they do this study on the zero emissions, I hope they include in that where the power is coming from and how the power will get to us.
Absolutely.
Because those are major concerns for me in this as we move forward. Because if everybody switches to electric, I'm still uncertain where all that power comes from.
Yeah, we actually have 3 specific check-ins with the board. The first happening this next month. It'll be preliminary just because we won't have a lot of chance to gather a lot of WTA specific information, but it will be around the state of the technology and some of the questions you had, Scott, around greenhouse gas emissions and the composition of the current electricity. And then we have one in July. That's about operations and other facility needs. And then we have a final one that has been tentatively slated for September. And that will help fill in some of those additional gaps, with the schedule, the sequencing and timeline, and in hopes that we have something to you for an October board meeting discussion. The plan itself, however, probably won't finish the final plan until the end of the year.
And I would note that the next item does have in it some aspects that have to do with fleet conversion to zero emission vehicles. That'll come up next. Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve these 2 task orders? Seeing none, I'll consider all motions passed unanimously unless there are objections. Are there any objections to passing the motion? Seeing none, that passes unanimously with the board members present. Thank you very much. We'll go on to the next item, which is the consideration of approval of the capital improvement plan. Mr. Bozzo, will you be presenting this?
Yes, good morning. So last week, the executive committee voted to recommend the board of directors approve the 2022 6-year capital improvement plan. This plan is going to be used for the 2023 to 28 TIP. Will be used to do our capital budget for next year and for long-range planning purposes. A committee was formed in 2017 for all capital projects with a cost over 100,000 and within the 6-year schedule. The sponsor of the project submitted a questionnaire, answered a questionnaire regarding the specifics of the project. Key items included were the compliance to correct an identified problem or enhance health and safety, renewal projects to address state of good repair of existing assets and reduce maintenance backlog, or enhance WTA's agency geographic reach, value of current services, and or procure additional assets. Also, items for the WTA 2040 goals and strategic alignment. So the grants opportunities need to be included in all our CIP and TIP schedules. So those are outlined in the attached schedule. We'll look at the CIP for projects for next year's budgets to be approved by the board. There's also at the bottom a list of 2040 projects that are not specifically part of the CIP, but are included so the board can see future costs that we will be looking for the board's approval in the budgets. I'd like to go to the projects itself and go down the list a bit and explain what we have in there. Josh kind of has blown it up a bit so we can actually read the schedule. Item 1 is the, hold on for, okay, there you go. Let's start with that, Josh. Line item 1 is the replacement of 2 diesel buses with electric buses. This is a state green grant. Those buses will arrive in January, and so those are ordered and the board has approved those. Line 2 and 3 are actually the same 8 buses. Right now, the board's approved to replace them with diesel that will arrive next year. And we have them at line 3, so the board could upgrade those in the future. And we are including those in our low-no grant and other bus and bus facility grants that we're working on right now. So they need to be included here. Skipping down to lines 9 and 10, we show propane buses that we actually have to, lines 7 and 8, we've carried over these 2 projects of paratransit buses due to the lack of availability of the chassis from Ford. So we moved those forward to 2023, and the buses we want to replace in 23, line 9, we moved out to 2024. Just too many buses trying to be delivered in 1 year. So we've actually extended the life of these vehicles. Also, I forgot to mention that we have added a column that we show next to the budget, and those are costs for electric vehicles. So we can compare the cost and the budget requests for future projects. Lines 11 through 13 are also paratransit replacements. And we are going to look in the future with our transition plan, what those vehicles are, if they're hybrid or electric or other propulsion systems. So we're just kind of put that out there in the schedule to be analyzed. We did the same thing for our van pool, lines 14 through 17. We're meeting with the van pool committee and looking at what's out there, what's available, what the customers need as far as the size of vehicles with the new state guidelines for van pool. So that's going to be worked on in the future. Moving down, we have bus shelter replacements. That's a state of good repair. And then line 19 is bus stop improvements, which is 50% funded from the Bellingham Transportation Levy. All that money would be spent in the city limits. And the other 75% will be agency-wide. We have capital improvement plans for or expansions for a Bay 2 lift in the shop. We have the BTS new concourse planned out for 2024 for planning and construction in 2025, I think. Can't see the years. But we have other projects down here for Wash Bay booth, the BTS building remodel that would go along with the BTS concourse expansion. We have line 24, the Midway Lot electric bus stop, bus backup generator. We have that in 2024. That would be if we can get a grant for it. And then we have the North Lot improvements starting to be in design next year, along with Moab first floor expansion, all being designed for next year. We have a couple of projects, 28 automated passenger accounting system that we're looking at for 24, and ops web software for operations to track leave and staff or hours scheduled for next year. The lines 30 to 35 are the 2040 projects that are just earmarked for certain years that we had in the 2040 plan, but will be worked on in the future and could move from year to year and cost. So those are just place markers for right now. But the bottom line, you can see what we have planned for the next 6 years. The budget line item, first line item, we have 95,000 for all those projects. And that does not include the electric vehicles. Electric vehicles would add another roughly $25,000, $25 million, excuse me. Questions?
And if I could just point out, lines 30 through 35 are not part of the CIP. It says that, but just for the recording. They're there just for context purposes.
Board members? And
I
I
have a-
believe we will need a motion. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I'll move that we approve this schedule, and then I do have a question.
Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, so we have 2 electric buses today, and if I take lines 1, 3, 5, and 6, I think I add up 27 of them in the next 6 years. But I think we have 12 charging stations that are complete. Are they complete, or are they 12 infrastructure form and only a couple of them complete?
Right now, we have 2 that are complete. We're scheduled to complete 4 more this summer. The chargers will arrive here within a month. And then the other ones will be included, are budgeted, included in the electric bus budgets for those vehicles. The infrastructure, yes, you're right. We only have room for 12. Part of the zero emission study and plan would be how we will upgrade our existing facilities to charge those vehicles.
Because my recollection was like a bus was 500,000 to 600,000, and the cost of the electric bus with the charging station was like 1.2 million. Am I off? But
Yes.
Okay, so that's so it's included. The charging stations are included with the purchase of the bus. And as I was also wondering, like on line 21 or line 24, no, sorry, 25. Are there more charging stations included in some of those big upgrades?
The line 24.
Sorry, 25.
Okay, 25, the infrastructure, the yard and all the conduits would be included in that project. Line 21, a BTS New concourse would include chargers for interim during the day boost charging as needed, keep the buses running. So we'll have more chargers than just here at Moab. Right now we're installing a charger out at our Cordata station for this summer.
And when a bus goes out, how long does the charge last?
Well, right now the first two are doing about 150 miles. In the future, they're looking at extending the battery life or power starting the middle of next year. That should add another 30% range onto the bus.
And how far does the bus go in an average day?
Depends on the route. We have routes right now that are for the day the bus goes, say, 130 miles. We have others that, you know, if it's out on the all day, and then on the night line, it could be 230 miles.
Thanks.
One other thing on the charging is that that'll be part of the zero emission transition plan to try to figure, because there's technology that it may not be the way the two that we have now where you plug them in. There could be overhead charging. There could be other ways of doing it that we need to look at as we're doing it for a larger fleet.
The question right now, if you have a charger at Cordata, how long's the bus got to sit on the charger to get?
Well, we can add 200 kilowatts in an hour, which is about half, 50% of a bus, what it can, its capacity. But in 10 minutes, we can add, 20 to 30 kilowatts that would extend it. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if we take a bus out of service for an hour, we can add 50% of the range. Let's say that.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? Again, I can't see board members at the moment. So this document has sort of a core element for the CIP and then two options, so to speak. As Les indicated, the ones at the bottom, they're placeholders. They're actually not part of the CIP. And then the electrification column, again, at this point is an option and with some numbers attached to it. There's no further discussion. I'm going to go ahead and call the question. If there are no objections to the motion, I'll consider it passed unanimously. Are there any objections to adopting the CIP? Hearing none, we'll consider that passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hold on. We're now going on to the consent agenda. Yes, so the next action is approval of consent agenda, meeting minutes, and then two routine matters. Actually, several routine matters.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Oh, sorry. If there are no objections, we'll consider the consent agenda approved unanimously. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. Thank you very much. We go on to reports to the board. First one is the financial framework discussion. Les, go ahead and begin.
Yes, yeah, and this one dovetails with the CIP that we talked about. What we wanted to talk about today is that as we've been thinking through the electrification, the zero emission bus issue and looking at the costs and those and trying to do a spend plan into the future. The reason we wanted, one of the reasons we wanted to add the 2040 CIPs at the bottom were to highlight the demand on dollars that WTA has going forward. And while we do have money now, there are some decisions, policy decisions that we'll need to make as we go forward. So wanted to talk about 20 this kind of framework, and I think what it sets up is a policy discussion for the board, which I'm super excited to have because it kind of sets out I think a transformational change for the organization to have that discussion. And what I mean by that is that historically, WTA has focused on the great service that it provides in putting buses on the street. 2040 identified a number of other things that WTA could be doing into the future. So lays out a number of, for lack of a better word, programs to look at into the future, and the size, shape, and scope can shift depending on the finances and service and so forth. But those programs include the zero emission, in no particular order, the zero emission bus transition and electrification, expanding on demand, expanding our transit demand management approach to get more cars off the road, to look at a BRT, bus rapid transit, 1 to 3 of those. Looking at transit corridors, as Tim articulated in the Transpo task order, along with speed and reliability investments, bus stops, a more proactive land use partnering with agencies, so that as development is occurring, it's occurring with transit supported ways, as opposed to finding out that the development is underway and then scrambling, trying to figure out how are we going to support it at the end. Increased partnering with agencies such as the school districts on things like electrification and so forth. The facility improvements you see in there. And then the big one that it identified was WTA getting into transit-oriented development. And so we have an opportunity to have a couple different kinds of proofs of concept on transit-oriented development. As a WTA landowner, for example, the Linden Park and Ride, which we have vacant land, and we also have some underutilized portions of that. Could that be turned into, obviously we have to work with Scott and his team as the home jurisdiction, and it's got to be to them, but could that be turned into something more productive with the vision of Linden, some sort of housing or something of that nature that is transit oriented on it, that as an example has the bus, the stations right there. It has grocery stores. It has things. So, are there ways to do that with the transit-oriented development? That proof of concept would be a WTA as landowner in a small or small environment. Then there's also landowner in a large urban area. So, for example, the Bellingham station. As we look at that and we add more bays and charging and so forth, we're going to be cracking in the ground. Are there synergies to look at doing something downtown that has affordable housing, childcare, those kinds of things that are transit oriented downtown? And then there could be a third proof of concept, which is where we're partnering with another landowner to do transit-oriented development, and there are properties around the county that could be eligible for something like that. What that shows is if we were good to go down that road, and you can see on just the capital aspect of it, the competing demands for dollars on that. So to that end, we're looking at that, and Josh, if you could put up the spreadsheet that Shonda kindly put together. This would be a financial framework, very, very high level, but a simplified way. What it would do is we would have, so you could see on here, and we would, one of the things to talk to the board about is probably tie this 23 to 28 maybe, so that it ties with the CIP, so you could do it. But we can lay out what are those predictable revenues that we have. We can do a kind of planning assumption for unpredictable, what are those competitive grants that were there? How much of our undesignated cash do we have to spend, which you'll see in the financial update that is in your packet. And then that could come up with a total revenue. Then on the expense side, what are those kind of must pays, if you will? We know we have to pay people. We know we have operation and maintenance, things of facilities and so forth. That number, and then factor in the bus, state of good repair, the bus replacements, that range, which is why we have the diesel to electric, so you can see the price range there. And then factor in the CIP and then these 2040 program things. So we can see what the revenue is. And then if we were to do a lot of those, the range of expenses. And as we subtract that off, you can see, okay, just the must pays off of what the total revenue is, would give you kind of an idea. And then we can kind of see from there, and it will show what we have to spend, so to kind of stimulate that policy discussion. So this, for today's purposes, wondering if something like this would work for the board. We can put numbers into it. And what I would propose respectfully is that at the June meeting, we have a 2-hour meeting. The first hour would be business, and the second hour would be discussing this kind of strategic policy decision on where we're going. And with that would be, yes, investigate this, come back, because we would need to organizationally align with, for example, transit-oriented development would require having some folks with that experience, that capacity. We don't want to set expectations that we can't deliver on. So I want to make sure the organization is aligned, and we can come back after that and kind of show what that would look like to implement this program. With all that said, things like the transit-oriented development are interesting and exciting ways for WTA to prove a value and a return on investment, particularly on those tax dollars going forward. That our mission, as you know, is to enhance the community, and then we do it by safe, friendly, efficient, reliable service, partnerships, and innovation and environment. And this is one of those ways to capture a lot of those and show value and return on investment on those dollars going into the future. It would also then cause us to have to make sure we're thinking differently, such that if we're looking at a public-private partnership on a transit-oriented development, that's going to be a little different skill set that we'll all have to work through on whether it's contracts and so forth. But it also talks about the fare discussion, for example. Is that fare revenue a bonding source such that we can use that to do other projects and develop into the future, so that we can keep a continuous role going on that? So there's a real opportunity to make a strong or prove a strong value proposition and return on investment on it. But there's competing dollars, and so we need to have that discussion. So this is just kind of teeing it up, and then I'd respectfully propose we have a little more in depth in June, and we'll fill this out with actual numbers, but wanted to see on this framework. So I'll pause there and see if anybody else on staff has anything they want to add as we've been talking this through, and then open it up for questions.
Okay, let's go ahead and turn to the board for any questions or comments on this framework and the proposal to extend our meeting in June to include a discussion of this, as I said, high-level financial framework looking ahead for the 5-year period. It was 2023 through 2028.
So that'd be June 9th. Is that what we're talking about?
I would respectfully propose that the full board meeting. So it would be the 16th, I think. I don't have the calendar in front of me. I think it's the 16th.
And Les, that spreadsheet, would we be seeing 5-year totals, not year by year? Again, we're trying to stay pretty high level.
Correct. Yep. And then that would marry up with the CIP, so it'd make it easy to kind of track.
So it seemed like one of the challenges is that we would want the framework to kind of indicate different possible scenarios, different possible allocation schemes. That doesn't show up great in a spreadsheet, or it takes some cleverness to make it show up well. But isn't that what we're talking about? Different scenarios where a particular initiative might be included, or it might be bigger, or it might be smaller.
Right, and I think fundamentally the initial question is, and what drove this kind of discussion was, as we were looking at, do we spend these one-time monies and the reserves that we have built up over the years? Do we spend them on purchasing electric buses on a quicker pace? And that shows we can do that, but that spends that down, and then we don't have the funding to do things like a transit-oriented development, or do we have it for to expand to BRTs and those kinds of things. And what that showed is organizationally we're aligned to purchase buses and do that and put that on the street. We're not necessarily organizationally aligned, and what I mean by that is staffing and resourcing, budgeting and so forth, to do transit-oriented development, for example. And so if the board would like to explore that more, we can lay that out in the spreadsheet, but we'll have to come back to the board and show, okay, this is, more people that we'd have to hire to do, real estate and those kinds of things, what that would look like, and how we would then align our mission and vision with our lines of effort on what we're trying to get done, what our the plan would be, the implementation plan, what are those projects that could get done, the budget and so forth. So over the next few months, that would have to be pulled together, but don't want to go down that road if the board would rather kind of stay with the what we've been doing really well and purchase electric buses on a quicker pace than what we had. And that's where this kind of why intersection kind of came up for us to made us from a policy standpoint, and hearing the board talk about transformational kinds of things like a TOD, transportation oriented development, could be a transformational change for WTA.
Board members, any comment at this point? Well, we've talked about, we're looking ahead several years, and we have financial resources that are in excess of what we would have had, and we need to do something with them. This is the big discussion about what to do with these short-term monies, what to do with the Move Ahead Washington monies, what to do with our regular or usual sources of income. This is that big high-level discussion in June. Todd.
I'm sorry, can I go?
Yes.
So Les, would you maybe have, multiple versions of that spreadsheet filled in under different scenarios, or we'd be trying to walk through that at the meeting? Or we'd have some kind of high-level numbers before the meeting?
Yeah, what we would do is take that spreadsheet, fill it out, and really where it becomes different scenarios is on the 2040 programmatic approaches. So expanding on demand, for example, to from Linden to Blaine and Ferndale, wherever, what that cost is. TOD would be a pretty big swag, but what that would look like if we did those 3 proofs of concepts, or at least 2 of them where we're landowner, what that would look like in very high numbers. We could say, that would require a couple different skill set employees and things of that nature to do. But just looking at kind of the predictable revenues, the predictable expenses, and then trying to drill down and say, okay, this is what we have that's really kind of discretionary spending, if you will. And then kind of what are those programs and kind of what the very big swag, but expending on demand to a different city, how much would that cost in very high level estimates, order of magnitude kind of estimates. Did that answer your question, Todd?
Yeah, no, I don't. We need to have the discussion, so that's good.
Okay, there are no objections. It looks like we're going to go ahead with that for the June 16th meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Vicki, I'll respectfully request if you could send an updated invite make that 2 hours, please, so people have it on their schedule. Thank you.
We'll now go on to two usual items, first quarter financial information and ratios and first quarter performance report. So Sean and Tim.
These two are on. We covered it with executive staff. So this will be just our executive committee, sorry. So this will be kind of a high level and then open it up for any questions that the board may have. Over to you, Shonda. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning. Yes, as Les and Michael stated, we talked about this last week, and just a quick assessment of the ratios. Revenues are coming in a little bit slower than we anticipated for this first quarter. So you see that first ratio we didn't meet, but I expect that those will pick up as we move forward. Expenses are under budget. Primarily that's due to our COVID safety payment that was not paid until April. So that's not reflected in these expenses. And we are seeing an increase in the fuel costs. On the second page, there's a couple of pie charts that we talked about last week. The first one showing I'm sorry, Josh, on the next page. Showing the revenues versus expenses, and that large orange piece of the pie on the top graph is the ARP funds. So we discussed if those go away, we'd be paying these expenses in the second chart from our regular sources, our predictable sources of revenue, and then our cash reserves. And then the last couple pages are just the regular financial statements for the quarter. So I would open this up for any questions that the board may have. Thank you.
Okay, performance.
Yeah, so this is Tim Wilder. I'll cover this one since we presented this to the board last week. I'll just be very brief, just highlighting that we did the completion of WTA 2040 Long Range Transit Plan in the first quarter. So that was a big success for us. And then just moving on to the charts and graphs, we are experiencing beginnings of an uptick in our ridership. You can see that in the first quarter, extended over from the fourth quarter of last year. So we're monitoring that very closely, especially for the fixed route service, and looking to see how the recovery is occurring. So we are seeing signs that it is recovering very slowly. We're at about 10 to 11,000 boardings per day as compared to about 21,000 in the pre-pandemic period. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'm hearing some noise. Maybe someone needs to mute their microphone. Just some rustling paperwork or something. I think no questions, so we'll go on to the next item. Josh, this is, I believe, you. It's a mission statement update on bullet point number 3, providing leadership in creative, innovative transportation solutions.
Well, thank you, Mr.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Josh.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just quickly want to highlight some of the areas that we're doing under that mission bullet there under innovative transportation solutions. There are 4 items identified in our 2022 work plan specifically. The first one is a transit access fund. This was identified as part of the WTA 2040 overall plan as well. And it's to facilitate construction of pedestrian and bicycle improvements near WTA bus stops, to and near WTA bus stops. The 2022 budget had $300,000 set aside for this grant program for these sorts of construction projects by local governments with a maximum award of $100,000. The project's now in its startup phase. Got a draft application form that's been looked at by local government partners and is close to being finalized. And we anticipate that the grant will open for applications in late May and awards made by midsummer 2022 to get some of these new construction projects going. Another innovative effort that we've got is it's actually an innovation team. So we've got a set of money set aside, as well as a framework that's starting to get together to create to generate and pursue new ideas while allowing for calculated risks. So the Fresh Ideas and Action team, the FIAT team, will be launching soon, and it'll consist of a multi-departmental team with 3 main objectives: to investigate and respond to unmet transportation needs, to improve public transportation, and to implement innovative internal projects. So they got some budget for that as well, about $250,000 in the 2022 budget. to get going and see what we can do there. And of course, one of our highlighted innovative transportation efforts is our Linden Hop. It's our first mobility on demand service and coming up on 1 year in service. Of course, people there can request a ride using a mobile app, the website, or by giving us a call. This is a little different than what we've seen at other transit agencies in that this one is completely run in-house. We don't contract it out. It's been well received by the community and able to fill gaps in our fixed route service in the Linden area. The pilot will be evaluated in 2023 with a recommendation on what to do next with it in time for the 2024 budget process. So, lastly, in our work plan was our radio system. It's key to our transportation success. Every day, transit operators are using it to do what we call transfer protection. That's calling ahead and making sure that somebody holds a bus so that they can make that connection, responding to emergencies, and generally helping us navigate the traffic around here. So today we're working on an innovative joint venture with the city and county to provide radio services to more agencies and in more areas. Not only does this benefit the community and the transportation efforts out there, but it serves WTA's needs of expanded and improved reliability and coverage. I hope to be bringing an interlocal agreement for your review here in the coming months to get that next step going there. Besides our scheduled for kind of innovative identified projects, there's everyday actions that are going on within WTA that are pretty innovative. We talk about our fleet, and we got those shiny, pretty new buses out there. You may have noticed our new fleet, new buses have a new paint scheme. As that was being put together, one of our fleet technicians who does a lot of that body work identified some really areas of improvement to the paint scheme that would allow that body work to be done much faster and much cheaper. So he doesn't have to paint 4 different colors on one panel or something like that. So that was an innovative cost-saving measure driven by frontline staff to really make changes in that area. And then, of course, this last winter, we had a really big snow event that really impacted Kendall. And so our fixed route fleet, when they're driving with chains, they can't go over 20 miles an hour. And so when Mount Baker Highway is snow free or plowed well, it doesn't make sense to run a fixed route bus up there with chains on it in order to have the chains when it's needed to drive around the Kendall neighborhoods. Normally and historically, we've just discontinued that service into those neighborhoods during these snow events. And we went 3 days with service discontinued into those areas and people unable to get out and get where they needed to go. Seeing that the snow event was running longer and just not satisfied with the solution that we had, operations team discussed a number of options and ended up assigning a paratransit vehicle and another driver just to do shuttle service out there in the Kendall neighborhood. So they went out there in the morning with chains, spent the whole day out there driving around just in that area. And we found that not only were we able to get people connected to the 70X so they could get into town and do their stuff, but they were also able to connect with the rest of the community out there and get into the grocery store or the gas station and stuff like that. So it took a lot of coordination with the East Whatcom County Resource Center, the Kendall Fire Station. Had a lot to do parking and turnaround, and also we this was during the pandemic as well, so we coordinated to pick up emergency food boxes as well. So that was part of this whole effort as well, to make sure that people got food in addition to transportation during that snow event out there in the Kendall area. So that worked really well, and that's staying in our toolbox for next time. So those are some of the innovative things that we've been doing and are working on.
So thanks, Josh. The intent, we've been doing this each month, and I hope the board with each of the mission bullets, and I hope the board finds that to be informative, because we want to make sure that the board and public and our teammates all understand that we are mission driven, and that's our mission and what we're doing to accomplish each of those mission bullets. So if the board likes that format, we'll just continue so that you would get one mission each month, kind of an update on what's going on. So if you could consider that, and we'll see if we want to continue that. But I think it's a good way to tie it all together.
Josh, what did FIAT stand for again?
FIAT, hold on, I got my notes here. It is the Fresh Ideas in Action Team. And FIAT is let it be done in Latin. So it's a Latin acronym effort here. So yeah, And that was actually an effort that came out of Mary Anderson as part of her leadership project for the WISTA leadership training that she went through. So she did a great job putting that together and presented on that to the rest of the community, and then brought it back to us. So.
Great, thanks, Mary.
All right,
Okay,
thank
we've got one more item, which is the general manager's report.
I will make that quick because I've been flapping my gums long enough. But one thing I want to make sure the board is aware of is the vendor for our porta potties down at Bellingham Station removed them because of continued vandalism and drug use and damage to them. We are still working with the health department to get our indoor bathrooms cleaned and certified to reopen. So there are no bathrooms at the station down there, but the vendor couldn't take more vandalism and damage to those, and we found out yesterday was removing them. So we'll continue to look at that and try to move up quicker, getting the bathrooms cleaned downtown on that, but it does present an issue. Then the other thing, I'll turn it over quickly to Vicky, is as of June 1, we do have to start, we can't go fully virtual. We have to have an in-person opportunity for people, for the public to show up. So Vicky's leading that effort. So Vicky, I'll turn it over to you for a quick brief on that. Thank you.
You're muted, Vicky.
Sorry. Yes, so we do have some changes to the Open Public Meetings Act, and the governor did issue a proclamation rescinding his whole series of proclamations effective June 1st that gave pandemic-related restrictions on the open public meetings and public records requests. So as of June 1st, we'll again be required to hold meetings at a physical location. There are several nuances to that based on some recent legislation that changes the Open Public Meetings Act, and that legislation is ESHB 1329. So we're no longer required to provide video access to meetings, but it is encouraged in that legislation. And it does also require us to take public comment at regular meetings, but that's our current practice. But if we do allow verbal comment, then we're required to provide remote option for people to make a comment if they have difficulty in attending an in-person meeting. If we're still in a declared emergency, we can conduct remote only meetings, but we would need to document our reasoning for that. And even if there's no declared emergency, that new legislation specifically authorizes the board to attend any or all public meetings remotely. And the board has already approved changes to our bylaws to allow remote participation at meetings by board members. So we're set to go for that. So to comply with the new requirements, we'll begin holding hybrid meetings in June, and the physical location for our board meetings will be here at WTA in the boardroom at our office building on Bakerview Spur, and anyone who wishes will be able to attend remotely. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. Appreciate that. And then the last thing I had is along those lines on emergency declarations. Next month, we will bring back a discussion on the general manager's emergency declaration and what policies are underneath there that we've scaled back on, what still exists and so forth. So we can have that discussion. We're kind of in an odd time right now where there are some surge, but it's also scaling back and so forth. So want to give a board an update on where we're at on that, and we'll do that in June. And that's all I have, sir. Pending questions.
Any questions for Les on the general manager's report? If not, that was our last agenda item. Is there any further business before the WTA board? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting, and everyone stay safe and be good. And we'll see you in 3 weeks' time for the executive committee.